The idea behind doing a tape on lighting backgrounds is to look at background lighting as a separate element. I think too often we're lighting our subject areas and just kind of haphazardly letting spill light end up on the background from our key lights, from our fill lights, and the background just ends up illuminated by all of this spill light, and that's not what makes a great image. So the idea here is to look at a lot of different images and find out what made that image work. And often I think a lot of it has to do with light control of your main subject area. I put a lot of effort into controlling all of my spill light to keep that background area a separate element and keep it clear of any spill light. And then once it is clear of spill light, then I can use colored gels and patterns and all kinds of different techniques to give a sense of time of day or mood or drama or whatever I think is appropriate for the image. So hopefully by looking at all of these different images, we can start to give some new ways of thinking and some new techniques for lighting backgrounds.
There are many times in film and video production when elements in the background are difficult to control. Background elements such as lighted rooms, bright windows, and backlit signs might be thought of as a constant in your shots, and therefore they should be carefully considered when determining your working exposure and lighting plan. Bill Holshevnikoff explains.
The concept behind defining a constant is a very simple idea, but I think a very important one. If you have, say, a lighted sign or a newsroom or a brightly lit window behind your subject, then that's an area in your background that you need to consider in your exposure. And it's also going to affect your lighting plan. So let's say there's a newsroom behind me. I first set my exposure so the newsroom looks good. I check my f-stop, lock it off, and say it's f4. Then I light all of the talent in the news set in the foreground to match that exposure at f4, and then I'm done. And my background looks great and my foreground looks great, as opposed to just some arbitrary light value that I first light my subjects with and then look at the background and go, well, gee, it's too bright now, or it's too dark, and then trying to figure out the problem. So if you can attack it first by defining that constant, the area that you can't change the brightness of, define it, lock it in, get your exposure for it, and then light your subject to match that exposure, you're going to save a lot of time and effort and get a lot better looking images.
In this first image, Holshevnikoff used both lighting and filtration to create a natural-looking scene. The defining element, or constant, in the shot was the bright, sunny exterior scene behind the couple in the spa. To determine how to best light this shot, Holshevnikoff first set the camera for a proper exposure of the background. A two-stop neutral density graduated filter also is used to control the brightness of the sky and the lake. With the camera set at f11 for a proper background exposure, two airy 1200-watt HMI par lights were then used to light the foreground area. The first light was placed outside the patio area and was used to simulate sunlight on the subjects. The second instrument was placed at ground level near the edge of the spa. With a single sheet of GAM 1075 diffusion on the front of the barn doors, this instrument was set close to the subjects to produce a light level that would match the brightness of the background exposure. The addition of the two-stop ND grad filter reduced the brightness of the background at the top of the frame to complete the image. A look at the diagram of the lighting shows the placement of the light sources relative to the subjects and the camera. In another example of lighting for a background element, this image of a hotel sleeping room reveals natural-looking interior lighting. But the lighting plan for this shot was determined by the brightness of the daylight exterior. With the interior lighting turned off, we can see the properly exposed window area and just how little ambient room light there really is relative to the brightness of the sun. By opening the camera iris, a better ambient light exposure can be achieved, but the window, the constant in this shot, is then overexposed. By first determining the proper exposure of your background element, you can then light the interior space at the proper light level to create a natural-looking, well-exposed image. The diagram shows where two airy 1200-watt par lights were hidden from the camera to create the shaft of light and the bounce fill lighting for the room. Another situation that is common to lighting interviews on location is the window background. For this shot, Holshevnikoff first set his exposure to get the look that he wanted with the warm, late afternoon light coming through the blinds. And he then lit the subject with tungsten lights to match the exposure of the windows. A look at the diagram for this image shows the use of a 1,000 watt Lowell total light inside a medium Camera light bank. The light bank is the main light source and is set very close to the subject to match the exposure of the window area. A small white card was used as a bounce fill source, and an airy 300 watt Fresnel light was used to light the plant behind the subject. Another look at the final image shows how simplistic the lighting plan can be once you have first set your exposure for the constant in the background. This lighting evolution of an interior restaurant scene shows yet another example of how lighting for an established background exposure can help you to quickly produce accurate results when working with difficult backgrounds. Finding the constant in a studio setting can be just as important as when working on location. This image of a news set in Bucharest, Romania, was illuminated almost entirely with KinoFlow fluorescent fixtures. But before a single fixture was turned on, the camera exposure was first determined by the brightness of the background elements, and the subjects were then lit to match the camera exposure. The graphic in the background was backlit by warm white fluorescent tubes, and the daylight color-balanced monitors were covered with 1/2 CTO correction gel. This fluorescent-lit news set in San Francisco has a working newsroom behind the set. The station wanted to see the busy newsroom in the background, but did not want the background elements to conflict with the foreground talent. By using the newsroom as a constant and intentionally underexposing the background first, the foreground subjects were then lighted to become a focus of the image. In addition, a dark blue shark's tooth net was stretched on frames and placed behind the talent. A 2,000 watt Fresnel lensed light with a single sheet of GAM 1/2 CTB correction gel was used to illuminate the bottom half of the netting. This lighting effect added color to the shot and also further obscured the movement in the newsroom from the camera. Once you have determined if there is a background element to consider in your lighting plan, you must then decide which lighting instruments are best for the job. Light control is one of the most important aspects of lighting. Choosing the proper instrument and controlling the spill light from your backgrounds can add impact and production value to your images.
Light control, I believe, is one of the most important aspects in successful background lighting. And even in a simple setup like this with a very saturated color background, if we had spill light from the main sources on there, that color would be washed out. So either you have to have a great deal of distance between your subject and your background so the light just falls off and doesn't contaminate the background, or you need light control at your sources. Now, whether you use barn doors or flags or grids or louvers or whatever you can get your hands on, control the light at the source, and a lot of that has to do with where you place the source as well, but control the light at the source and keep it off of your background, and even just a little bit of control helps a great deal to be able to allow you to start to do some interesting things in the background and create either color backgrounds or slashes of light or patterns or whatever you feel is appropriate for the shot.
Hard light originates from two basic types of lighting instruments: lensed lights and open-faced lights. Light control with hard light sources is quite simple. The barn doors on either of these types of instruments can be used to easily control spill light for complete light control. GAM color black wrap foil can be used to extend the barn doors or to control any spill light if necessary. But there is another decision to make regarding choosing a hard light source for background lighting. Fresnel lensed lights produce sharper, more well-defined shadows when used to create patterns such as these Camera window patterns. Due to their lamp and reflector design, open-faced lights produce multiple shadows and slightly less defined patterns. It can be helpful when lighting backgrounds to understand the differences between the shadow rendering of the two types of sources. When working with softer diffuse light sources, the issue of light control becomes critical. This demonstration shows the effect of spill light from a small Camera light bank on the white background area behind the light source. Camera offers 3 different accessories for controlling spill light, and each attaches directly to the front of the light bank. The collapsible ribbon louvers offer vertical or horizontal control and have little or no effect on the light output of the source. By using the louvers, the fall-off of spill light on the background surface is considerable. The portable soft fabric grids add both vertical and horizontal control and are available in several different beam widths. Although there is some light loss with the fabric grids, the spill light control is excellent. The Chimera honeycomb grid can be used to create a controllable, narrow-beamed soft light source. Also available in several beam widths, the honeycomb grids are rigid aluminum grids that provide the ultimate in soft light control. For the Lowell Reefa light, a soft fabric grid can be added to the front of the source to dramatically reduce spill light. Using a soft grid on the Reefa light makes this efficient instrument a controllable soft light source. The KinoFlow fluorescent instruments also produce a soft, diffused light that could be difficult to control in tight spaces. For the control of spill light, KinoFlow provides sturdy plastic louvers that attach directly to the fixtures. Light loss is minimal in the subject area, and the horizontal and vertical control is excellent. As we will see in the following segments, controlling the spill light from hard or soft light sources is an important aspect of lighting backgrounds.
There are two basic procedures that I go through when I'm shooting on location, and the first is to get rid of any and all spill light. And the first place I look is the windows. And if there are windows in the room, I'm closing blinds, closing curtains, blacking out the windows with fabrics, whatever I can do to get rid of all that ambient daylight coming in, because that's going to wash my background and get rid of a lot of choices that I might have later if I control my background. And then I also work very hard to control all the spill light from my own light sources using grids and flags, and kind of intelligent light placement can help that as well. The second major thing that I do is try to get my subject away from the wall. Often when you're doing interviews in homes and offices, the person is just smacked right against a wall behind him. And then it's almost impossible to separate through lighting the subject and the background area. So I'll pull the desk in the office further away from the wall, or I'll take a chair and set it in the middle of the living room and set the subject there so I can isolate their lighting and then do my background work to get that kind of separation. And then I can start to give a sense of time of day or rake some interesting pattern across the background. Now, often when you're on location, you're looking to cut tree branches off of trees or take someone's mini blinds off their windows, and I'm kind of tired of doing that. So I came up with a system called window patterns, and I've been using these, and they're 6 Mylar patterns that you can use any kind of hard light instrument, an open face or Fresnel, and they're nice because they're very fast to set up, and then you just rake a light through it, and if the client doesn't like the look of a palm tree pattern, then you can switch it out to a Cucaloris or mini blinds or whatever you want, but it's very fast, and I think does very believable patterns for a location shoot.
In this first example with our subject Jolie, Holshevnikoff controlled the ambient daylight in the room and used only 3 lights to produce this attractive interview shot. To begin the setup, Holshevnikoff first closes the vertical blinds to reduce the ambient daylight in the room. To set up the main light source, a KinoFlow 2-foot 4-bank is secured to a C-stand and directed at the subject area. Fitted with tungsten bulbs, the fluorescent source is set vertically and used with louvers for improved spill light control. To provide separation for the subject from the background, a 300-watt airy Fresnel is placed behind the chair opposite the key light. To warm the color of the hair light, a single sheet of GAM color 1/2 CTO gel is attached to the barn doors of the light. To light the background wall and wooden shutters, a 650-watt airy Fresnel is directed at the background, and the barn doors are closed down and turned at an angle to control the lighting effect on the wall. A diagram of the lighting shows the placement of the subject's chair and the lighting instruments relative to the camera. A look at the final image of Jolie reveals the effect of all 3 instruments used in the shot. By turning off the hair light and background light, we can see the level of control that the KinoFlow light provides. The background wall is dark relative to the subject brightness, which allowed Holshevnikoff to add a dramatic yet simple lighting effect to the background wall. The 650 Fresnel creates the effect of a shaft of sunlight. The placement of the light on the wall also serves to provide separation for the chair and subject from the background. The addition of the hair light creates further separation for the subject and visually balances the image with the bright wooden shutters at frame right. This location interview also benefits from two types of light control. By controlling both the ambient daylight and the spill light, some simple background lighting techniques were used to add a dramatic flair to the interview. To begin the lighting for the main subject, a soft grid is opened and then attached to the front of a small camera light bank. The grid easily attaches to the front of the light bank and turns the light bank into a very directional soft light source. A 1,000-watt airy open-faced instrument is attached to a speed ring at the rear of the light bank. To provide separation light on the subject's hair and shoulders, a 300-watt airy Fresnel is secured to the arm of a C-stand. A single sheet of GAM-color light bastard amber gel is attached to the barn doors. To add interest to the main background wall, Camaro window patterns are set up on a small light form frame. For this shot, 2 of the durable mylar patterns are attached to the black donut fabric. Behind the window pattern is a 1,000-watt Lowell DP light. The light is turned on and the pattern is projected on the wall behind the main subject. Holshevnikoff selected an open-faced instrument for a softer pattern effect on the wall. Camaro window patterns are a portable shadow casting system that can be used with any hard light source to create realistic window patterns and tree branch effects on your backgrounds. The different patterns can be used individually or combined for a variety of effects. To create light in the hallway behind the main wall, a 300-watt airy Fresnel is bounced to create an ambient hall light. With the window blinds in the room closed to remove ambient daylight, the tungsten lighting setup for the main subject is complete. To provide some light for the reporter's shoulder and hair, a 250-watt Lowell Pro light is bounced off a white bounce board. A diagram of the lighting setup also reveals the camera placement and the windows in the room. The final over-the-shoulder shot shows the effect of controlling both the ambient daylight in the room and the spill light from the main light source. This image shows the effect of the ambient spill light from the windows in the room. With no other lights on, we can see the blue color of the daylight spilling into the room. With the window blinds closed, the main light source is turned on without the soft grid on the light bank. Without light control on the soft key light source, the background wall is washed with light and there's little hope to generate an interesting background lighting effect. The addition of the soft grid controls the spill light on the background wall and reduces the brightness of the wall so that a background lighting effect can be used. By turning on the background window pattern effect, good separation is achieved between subject and background, and dramatic interest is also added to the shot. The addition of the 250-watt Pro light directed at the bounce board provides sufficient, soft, natural-looking light on the reporter in the foreground of the shot. The 300-watt separation light adds nice highlighting to the hair of both subjects in the shot, and the second 300-watt Fresnel illuminates the hallway with a warm glow of the light brown carpet in the hall. Finally, the practical lamp is turned on to bring more interest to the background area. To control the brightness of the table lamp, the light was routed through a small inline dimmer and dimmed down to an appropriate level. Another look at the diagram reveals the placement of each lighting instrument in the setup. A quick look at the reverse angle shot of the reporter gives us another example of just how important light control can be. Without the use of the soft grid on the light bank, and with the ambient daylight on the background wall, the background becomes too bright and much less interesting. By eliminating the daylight and by controlling the spill light with a soft grid, the background falls to near darkness. This type of light control on the background allows you to then use light to illuminate only those areas that you choose. The final lighting effect adds visual interest, but does not draw the attention away from the subject. This interview was shot during the middle of the day. Once again, by controlling ambient daylight on location, your background lighting can create a sense of time and mood. The main light source for this interview with Jolie is the KinoFlow 2-foot 4-bank. Set horizontally with the louvers, the soft light source provides the subject with an attractive key light without contaminating the background and fireplace areas. Below the subject, at the base of the fireplace, a 250-watt pro light is directed at the subject's face. A small piece of GAM 1050 frost and full CTO gel are clipped to the front of the light. Behind the talent is an airy 300-watt Fresnel that also has a sheet of full CTO gel clipped to the barn doors. Both the Fresnel and the Pro Light are used to create the feeling of flickering firelight. Both lights are being controlled by the GAM SPE5 Flicker Master. The Flicker Master is a variable dimmer and random flicker generator that can power up to two 1,000-watt tungsten lights. For this shot, Holshevnikoff is using the flicker generator to create the firelight effect both on the talent and in the fireplace. To complete the lighting, a second 300-watt area is set high on a stand and directed at the background wall behind the subject. A single sheet of 1/4 CTO gel is added to the light to give the background a slightly warmer color. A look at the diagram shows the placement of the 4 lighting instruments in the room. Looking at the completed image, we can see the effect of each light source and the flickering firelight effect created by the SPE5 effects box. Using the KinoFlow main light only, without the louvers, we can see the spill of light onto the fireplace and background wall. By attaching the louvers to the fluorescent source, the spill light is contained and the background areas are reduced in brightness. The addition of the 300-watt Fresnel light on the back wall provides excellent separation for the subject from the wall and illuminates the bookshelves for added interest. Behind the subject, a 300-watt Fresnel is run through the flicker generator, and we can see the pulsing white light at the base of the fireplace. Adding the single sheet of full CTO gel warms the light and improves the realism of the lighting effect. The second fire effects light can be seen better in the close-up. Clipping a sheet of frost and CTO gel to the barn doors created a slightly softer firelight effect on the hair and cheek of Jolie. A final look at the completed image once again reveals the importance of light control for background lighting on location. There are a wide variety of color gels available. When used in conjunction with proper light control, colored gels can greatly enhance your imagery. The creative use of colored gels for background lighting can provide a sense of mood or drama to both studio and location productions. Holshevnikoff explains.
I think lighting backgrounds with colored gels is a lot of fun, but there is one trick to getting saturated colors like this, and it again comes down to light control. Your background needs to look black on camera before you add your colored gel light to get really saturated gel colors. The idea behind this is that if you contaminate your background with spill light from your main sources, it's going to take, for instance, this white piece of foam core and turn it gray. And then once it's gray, you're not going to get that saturated color that you would get out of a black background. Now, as it sits right now, the top of the board looks black on camera. And that means I've achieved this by controlling all the spill light, and there's so little light on that board that it looks black on camera. Now, if you're shooting film, that means your background needs to be about 3 to 3.5 stops under your main subject exposure to get this kind of saturation of the gel colors. But once you get your background down to looking black or even near black on camera, then when you add gel light, boy, the colors really pop on film and video, and it really can make a difference in your productions.
Before we begin to examine the use of gels for background lighting, we must understand the concept of light transmission through colored gels. If we look at the GAM colored gel swatch, we can see that each gel lists a number that represents the light transmission, or the T factor of that gel. For instance, gel number 740 has a T factor of 17%. That means that this gel, when used on a light, will allow only 17% of the light to pass through the gel, while the remaining 83% of the light is absorbed by the gel. It is important to understand light transmission factors to be able to predict the light loss from each gel you use. By using T-factors when lighting backgrounds, you can be sure to choose the proper light intensity for the desired lighting effect. In this first image, we can see how the use of a colored gel background can enhance a studio product shot. Through careful light placement and proper light control, the white foam core background surface appears black on camera before the background light source is turned on. With the 650-watt Fresnel light turned on, the lower half of the white background area is now illuminated, while the top of the background remains black. The simple addition of 1 or 2 sheets of a colored gel on the light instantly turns the white surface into a saturated colored background effect. Once the proper lighting is completed, it is then just a matter of selecting a background color for the final shot. Without careful consideration of light control, we can see how spill light can contaminate the background surface, and how the effect of any colored gels on the background now appears washed out and is much less dramatic. A look at the lighting setup for this shot reveals the use of a soft grid on the overhead reefer light and careful placement of the airy 300-watt accent light to ensure that the white background surface remains unaffected by spill light. A 650-watt Fresnel is used for the background lighting effect. In a similar setup, we can see that any neutral tone can be used as a background for colored gels. For this shot, a piece of black duvetine cloth was used for the background. Due to the light-absorbing qualities of black surfaces, a colored gel effect on black will require a more powerful lighting instrument to achieve a similar effect as when using a white background. News sets and other studio productions can also benefit from the use of colored gels. This news set was designed with the colored gel effect as an integral part of the set. The white translucent wall in the background of this set is backlit by gelled fluorescent tubes, and just as with any other gel effect, light control was a major concern. To ensure vivid saturated colors, Holshevnikoff kept all spill light from the set off of the white background wall. With the gelled fluorescent tubes turned off, we can see that the background surface appears black on camera. With the fluorescents turned on, the overlapping gels produce a rich, graduated colored gel effect. Using tungsten-balanced fluorescent tubes, the gels used for this effect were 2 stops of neutral density gel, combined with GAM color number 740 off blue at the top, and a combination of GAM full CTO and light bastard amber gel at the bottom. Colored gel effects can also be created by using different color temperatures of light. This footage from a car commercial was captured on a tungsten-balanced film stock. The car was lit by tungsten light with an overhead 15 by 30-foot Camera F2 bank, but the blue background glow was achieved by using daylight-balanced HMI PAR lights. The daylight colored light from the 3 1200-watt PARs would appear as white light on a daylight-balanced stock, but on tungsten film, the HMIs produce a saturated blue colored background effect on this gray studio cove. The diagram for these images shows a large overhead soft light source suspended over the car and the 3 PAR lights hanging from the grid directly behind the F2 bank. To light the front bumper and grille of the car, 2 1,000-watt Fresnels were directed into a 4 by 8-foot piece of foam core board, which was placed in front of the car. Another useful instrument for creating interesting background effects is the ellipsoidal or Lico light. Lico lights can be used with a wide variety of patterns to generate a multitude of background lighting effects for studio or location productions. Additional still or moving background patterns can be created with the use of the GAM spin effects. The spin effect system allows 2 effects discs to spin in opposite directions. Variable speeds can be controlled by most dimmers. The spin effects is best used on the front of a Lico light, but it can also work well with the Fresnel lensed light and PAR lights. When used with colored gels, water and other moving light effects can be created quickly and repeated easily. Colored gels can also be used effectively in location environments. Medical buildings often present white walls as a background in almost every room, but with careful light placement and light control, an entirely different mood can be created with the use of colored gels. This image was created in a small eye examination room. A 750-watt Lowell total light in a small Camera light bank served as the main light source. With the light bank directed away from the back wall, and by using a honeycomb grid on the light bank, nearly all spill light was eliminated from the background wall. An airy 300-watt Fresnel was then used with lavender gel to create the colored background effect. This image of a speaker in a boardroom was enhanced by light control and the use of colored gels. By first exposing for the constant in the shot, which was the projected image on the screen, Holshevnikoff then lit the subject to match the screen exposure. The use of barn doors on a 650-watt Fresnel and proper positioning of a camera light bank kept the screen and white walls free of spill light. Two 300-watt Airy Fresnels were then used with blue gel to accent the background with color. This corporate office shot provides another example of using gels on location. The use of a grid on the main light bank controlled the spill light from reaching the white walls and blinds in the background. With little light on the background surface, the 650-watt Fresnel with 1/2 CTB gel created a rich slash of colored light that has a dramatic impact on the image. And finally, this corporate interior fountain shot was altered through lighting and the use of color. The fountain area was inside the atrium lobby of a building. Using three 1200-watt HMI par lights, Holshevnikoff illuminated the subject and background structures with two instruments and used the third with a lavender gel to backlight the fountain spray. For this shot, it was the placement of the subject's key light that kept the spill light from contaminating the fountain area. Many locations already have an existing base of light. How you use the existing light and what you do with your backgrounds can have an enormous effect on the production value of your images. Sometimes it takes only the addition of some supplemental lighting to bring the best out of a location.
A lot of times when you're working on location, you're in an environment, a corporate office or a store, where there's an existing base of light. And whether it's from fluorescence or the overhead practicals in a supermarket or from windows in that kind of environment, that existing base of light is kind of your constant, and you need to work with and around that. And when I'm in those kind of environments, what I try to do is supplement that lighting in the background. So I might rake a light across a wall to bring the texture out of that wall, or throw a little extra light on some greenery in the back to really punch up the color. But those type of locations really require that you add a little extra light here and there to bring out the best of a situation. In the corporate industrial realm, you might take a little colored gelled light, a little blue or a little lavender, and just add a touch of color here and there just to make that environment a little more fun to watch on camera. Now, if you're working outside, it can be a different situation because, again, there's an existing base of light. It's a natural ambient daylight. And a lot of times your backgrounds for interviews outside are greenery. It's foliage. And green leaves can look very dark on camera unless you've got a lot of direct light on them. So that's when shiny boards and HMI pars come in very handy, because you can take a shiny board and actually redirect the sun and really punch up those green leaves in the background and bring a lot of color to the image and make it a lot more fun for the viewer to watch.
These interviews were captured in a large natural food store. The existing light was overhead mercury vapor lights, which is close to daylight color balance. For both interviews, the subjects were lit with a KinoFlow 2-foot 4-bank with daylight tubes. This first image was set near a large window, with a bookshelf set underneath the window in the background. Once the subject lighting was complete, Holshevnikoff then used a 650-watt tungsten Fresnel to illuminate the bookshelf and provide a warm glow for the background of the image. The second image was lighted in the same manner. Because of the extended color latitude of video cameras, Holshevnikoff will often mix color temperatures and use tungsten lighting for backgrounds when working in a daylight setup. In this instance, the supplemental lighting brought the greens in the background to life. Empty walls can be a difficult lighting task. Sometimes, if the light can seem motivated by a window outside the shot, breakup or window patterns can provide a believable background treatment for locations. This first image in a hotel room utilized Camera window patterns to create a late afternoon feeling. A look at the diagram shows that a light bank was used with a soft grid to provide a controlled key light that was motivated by the desk lamp, and a 650-watt Fresnel was used to project the patterns on the background wall. The camera was balanced for tungsten light. The second image used window patterns to fill a large background wall with dappled light. By turning off the two background effects lights, we can see how the reception desk area looked with the use of the talent light only. The addition of a 1,000 watt Fresnel through the pattern brings life to the large wall behind the subjects. A white bounce card was then illuminated to reflect in the gold letters on the wall, and the background lighting was completed. The diagram for the setup reveals the placement of the two background effects lights relative to the subjects and the camera. Some locations may seem more difficult than others. When Holshevnikoff was given this frame for an interview, this was the result. The simple addition of two tungsten instruments to the background areas made this daylight setting come to life. The diagram reveals that the framed artwork was actually on the opposite side of the glass hallway, and that lighting the artwork allowed the pieces to be seen as a reflection in the window. The second instrument was directed at the cubicle wall, which is seen through the glass behind the subject. Another look at the two images confirms just how important supplemental lighting can be to your location productions. Some locations present windows in the background, but no interesting light play through the windows. This shot was accomplished with two HMI par lights. The first was bounced off the ceiling above the bed, and the second par light was set outside the shuttered windows in the background, and the light was directed through the blinds. Using a par light in this manner provides the feel of raw sunlight entering the room. This feeling of sunlight provides motivation for the foreground lighting as well. The lighted gas fireplace also adds a nice touch to the image. There are also locations that seem to be just perfect, but there is always room for improvement. This image was captured at dusk with the camera balanced for daylight. The only additional lighting added was two 250-watt Lowell Pro lights inside the two cabanas behind the pool. Although a background lighting contribution can be small, the effect on the visual balance of the image can be considerable. These locations require just a little supplemental lighting for the background greenery. Each of these images benefited from the use of shiny boards or HMI pars on the background areas. Shiny boards are hard silver reflectors that can be used to redirect the sun when needed. When shaded bushes or shrubs are in your background, the use of a shiny board can instantly add life to your shots. This image of Debbie shows how simply redirecting the sun can change the color and feeling of the background. This first image was captured on the front porch of a home, and the flowers and greenery in the background were illuminated by a single shiny board. The diagram of the lighting shows the placement of the shiny board relative to the sun and the subject lighting. This shot was recorded in the kitchen of a home. The subject was lit with a 1200-watt HMI par and a small light bank. The tree seen through the window was illuminated by a shiny board set on the ground below the tree. The diagram for this setup reveals the placement of the shiny board and a second par light that was directed through the window as an accent light. The final image was set in a backyard that has no direct sun, so shiny boards were of no use. Three 1200-watt HMI par lights were used to light the image. One of the pars was directed at the background greenery, the second was used as a backlight, and the third was used as a subject key light. So whether you're shooting indoors or out, in the studio or on location, it is clear that careful background lighting can greatly enhance your images and your final product.